see you. You are the army of change, and it's really moving to be here. And I know it's been Sam's dream from the start that one day we would be able to look out at 1,000 or more leaders of this effort coming from across the country, from dozens of campuses, and the moment has arrived. And so can I thank you for being here. Because we have our challenges ahead, and you are going to be the ones to make the difference. And it's really going to be your brain power, your solutions, your efforts on the ground, your heart, which will determine how far we get, whether we succeed, and whether we are able to overcome some of the scourges that obviously still afflict us. What a weird world we have right now, by the way. You know, because on the one side, there are such phenomenal advances day to day, wonderful breakthroughs in information technology that Akhtar and his colleagues lead, wonderful breakthroughs in democracy that Emilia Pires exemplifies and makes robust, and that our next speaker, a great leader, Lema Bowie, will talk about, also exemplifies. But at the same time, some of those great advances obviously have their weird, unexpected downside. We've been experiencing it this week when a completely asinine and idiotic YouTube posting was enough, obviously because there's tinder brush there that can catch flames, to set off mass rioting and lots of deaths across a vast region of dozens of countries now, and a tremendous amount of anti-American sentiment at the same time. And it is that dual side of YouTube making possible the democratic revolutions, and YouTube and Twitter and social media making it possible for the kind of mindlessness and thoughtlessness of the last few days to explode and lead to profound unrest that really is the paradox that we live in right now. We live in a time of unbelievable technology, unbelievable change, unbelievable ability to do things, and yet a kind of recklessness or disregard or a downside or harsh potential of these technologies at the same time. And everywhere that we look right now, I think we see this paradox. You know, we have the world's largest economic output, the highest average level of economic productivity in world history on average. We have in the United States, obviously, phenomenal technologies that have been developed and coming online. And yet, because we pursue the technologies rather blindly, but we don't look at the implications of those technologies very well, we've also had in the last 12 months the worst drought in modern American history. We've had the warmest or the hottest 12 months of human history reported in North America. We had the hottest single month of American history in July of this year, because we have, as a result of our dynamism and now our boom in natural gas and hydrocarbons generally, we have a runaway process of climate change that is the counterpart to this technological dynamism. And how much are we talking about it right now? How much have you heard the candidates in the campaign mention the word climate? Has anybody heard that once, by the way? So this is the strange reality of your lives and the world that you are now going to be leading very, very soon, and in which you're already stepping into positions of tremendous responsibility even as you get started in this. It's a paradox that we've been living with for a while. I'm spending a lot of time these days, of course, as we all are, thinking about presidential leadership, thinking about our coming election, thinking about whether we can mobilize efforts to change the direction of this country in some important ways, of whether we can revive at the national and the political level the spirit of global cooperation that is so essential for our survival. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about a president who worked very, very hard to try to accomplish that in extraordinarily difficult times and unique times in a different way from ours, and that's John Kennedy, half a century ago. And already President Kennedy, 51 years ago, when he gave his inaugural address, the famous address when he asked what we can do for our country, also made a point which is exactly this paradox of our high-tech world. Because he said already 51 years ago that mankind holds in his hands the power both to end all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And that is really our existential reality. In Kennedy's time, it was mostly about the Cold War and the threat of nuclear arms. In our time, we see that it is the great divisions between Islam and the Christian world that are not healing, but are so subject to explosion, unrest, violence, terror, deaths, war, and perhaps an even more bizarre paradox that I mentioned, and that is that our high tech and our worldwide diffusion of modern technology to China, to India, now to Africa and elsewhere, also means that humanity's effects on the earth itself have reached a level that we put our own survival in peril through our damaged physical environment. And we see this in a kind of soft, dry run in the United States this year. It's not so soft, this terrible drought, because it is the largest drought in many decades. It's destroyed a significant proportion, maybe 20% of the wheat crop. It has sent food prices spiraling that will have worldwide ramifications. But what you might not have noticed, because we don't see these things very clearly right now in our noisy world, is that the last 2 years have also been global climate shocks elsewhere that have already claimed vast numbers of lives, not just crop failures or soaring prices. I spent a lot of the past year in the Horn of Africa, where there was a massive famine in 2011. That's the region of Somalia, Ethiopia, northern Uganda, northern Kenya. There was a terrible drought. Millions of people were affected. There were flashes of conflict. There were millions of refugees. The area where we work in northeast Kenya was basically overrun by a lot of violence because the war between Al-Shabaab, the extremist group in Somalia, and Kenya meant that there was a tremendous amount of unrest and terror. And there were also vast numbers of refugees that came over the border trying to survive this drought coming into Kenya. And then this year, we had another drought, this time in West Africa, in the Sahel, which is the region just south of the Sahara Desert. And this was very odd for me, also very personally gripping, because I was there in January in Mali, and I had a wonderful evening and dinner with the political leadership sitting under the stars in an outdoor dinner talking about the situation, but the governor of the province sitting next to me was saying, Mr. Sachs, it's very dry here, the drought is very severe, and can you help get some more wells drilled urgently, because the feud between the pastoralists and the farmers is so intense that there's a lot of violence taking place. No sooner did I get back to the United States and start trying to make phone calls, but all to no avail because everybody's got tight budgets, no one's paying attention to this right now. There was a coup in Mali which threw out the government in the south. The army disintegrated. There was a violent rebellion in the north. Some of you may have seen the destruction of ancient, invaluable, priceless, unique cultural relics in the city of Timbuktu, which is on the Niger in the middle of Mali, and where camel caravans for hundreds of years have made that a center of Islamic learning. And the rebels destroyed mosques and mausoleums and cemeteries out of some completely bizarre and twisted view of extremism. But ancient and preserved heritage lost just in a matter of days. And again, in our own project, people had to flee by boat on the river for a couple of days just to get out of there. We haven't been back to that region because it's so violence prone. So this is really the truth. And this is complicated. And the complication is that on the one hand, what President Kennedy said already 51 years ago is vastly more true today. Vastly more true. We hold in our hands the means to end all forms of human poverty. It's unbelievable. It's actually your homework assignment. It's inescapable. Because once you can do it, if you don't do it, the world ends up like you've seen in the last couple of days. Profoundly divided, distrustful, and at gunpoint. Because we can't go on with the ability to end poverty and still be leaving millions of people to die each year and think that that's okay. And not only is it okay, but it's going to be okay. And they're going to like us, and that's fine. And somehow the world is going to be able to hold together at a human and a political level. It doesn't work. Either we recognize this power that we have in our hands and exercise it and solve these problems, or we're going to find out that we're overwhelmed by the problems. And it is a little bit of a race against time, I have to tell you. So this is a homework assignment with a due date. I'm going to give you 15 years. And I also like to relieve you that it's open book. You can work in groups. You can ask your advisors about the answers, or at least what might be thought about the answers. But you can't just wait. And the reason we can't just wait is that losing a year or losing 2 years isn't really just a loss of time and another 7 million children under the age of 5 who would die because of that waste of time, because that's how many children under 5 die needlessly each year. But it's also a race against time because we have growing population pressures, growing environmental crises, growing distrust. And so we have to get ahead of the curve. We have to shape our destiny, not just roll with it. And that's why I'm telling you it's extremely important that you're here. It's extremely important that you see that you are shapers of your destiny. You're not observers. It's a little tiresome to be asked, do you think poverty will be ended or not? It's not the point. The point is it can be ended. And so the point is we have to choose to end it. We have to take the vision of what that would mean. We have to break it down into its component parts. And then we have to go at it. And we have to be clever and flexible and highly adaptive at it. Because we don't know exactly who are the allies and who's going to come to help. You never can be very sure about this. And we're in a phase right now, for instance, where government doesn't do very much, actually. Our government, I mean. And I was surprised, George Bush, who was not my favorite president, was just about the most dynamic president in modern times in actually doing something about these issues. For a lot of interesting reasons, but he established PEPFAR, he established the President's Malaria Initiative, and did terrific things. He also wasted a lot of lives and about $3 trillion in two incredibly stupid wars. But President Obama, who's my guy, and vote for him again for sure. But he's been to Africa only one day. And he's not leading on these issues right now because he doesn't think it's good politics. Or his aides don't think it's good politics. Do we think it's good politics? Do we think Americans care? Do we think his core supporters, that's you, his most active supporters, young people in this country, do you care? Let them know that this is good politics. Just like, by the way, the religious constituencies let George Bush know that treating people with AIDS was good policy, good politics. That's how it happened. I know, I was there. But I wasn't there in the right way. I made all the rational arguments I could possibly make, and I think I did a pretty good job. And a former student of mine led me out of the White House and said, "Good try, that was a great presentation, Jeff, but you don't stand a chance." And then Bono read scriptures with Jesse Helms. And soon after, there was a $3 billion AIDS program. And that's the truth, that's how it happened. And so we have to let our guy know this is good politics. And you have to make it so. You have to show that it's so. That Americans care, that we feel the world's dangerous if we're not solving these problems. And that America has the cleverness, the resourcefulness, the guts, the temperament, and the burning desire to solve these problems. So if we let President Obama know that on the occasion of his second inaugural address, I'm sure that we can get somewhere. Now, very briefly, the truth is we've made a lot of progress. But we've made a lot of progress not because things are happening by themselves, but because if you take technological breakthroughs and combine it with human purpose and put in some Bill Gates philanthropy and put in some Microsoft smarts and put in some PEPFAR and Global Fund money, it's unbelievable what can happen. 10 years ago, when I headed the Commission on Macroeconomics and Health for the World Health Organization, we called for more help for health. This was something that Bill Gates helped me to do. We didn't even know that there could possibly be phones in every village around the world, empowered community health workers, making it possible to track drug logistics, making it possible to monitor what was happening, changing the entire face public health delivery in the poorest places in the world. Who knew that anti-malaria bed nets, because of technological breakthroughs, would go from having to be retreated every 3 or 6 months and thereby becoming useless very fast, to being long-lasting 5 to 7 year nets, transforming the control of the mosquito biting that transmits the disease. Who knew that instead of a mother carrying a child 10 kilometers to try to find, usually in vain, somebody with a microscope that could read a blood stain to see whether the child was infected with malaria, there would now be a little plastic strip using the most advanced and clever technologies where 1 drop of blood in the village, in the poorest place in the world, can be read by a community health worker in what's called a rapid diagnostic test to do malaria control, not in the clinics, but right in the home, and thereby make it possible to do the bottom line. Malaria deaths have come down by about 40% since 2005. Get them down almost to 0 by 2015 if we get our act together. We need to empower community health workers with their mobile phones, with their rapid diagnostic tests, with their long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, with a little bit of training, and we can drive this scourge, which is an ancient scourge that has held regions in poverty for hundreds of years, killed millions and millions. We can get the deaths down almost to nothing. So go out there and do that. And work on how to program phones and work on clever local language solutions to this disease. Train community health workers. Show how to expand the best practices. Do it in this question, in safe childbirth, in immunization, in getting kids in school, in helping to connect kids to the new world of information technology. And the latest forecast is by 2018, 80% of the world's population will have access or be in an area with access to wireless broadband. So think of what can be done if you write the apps for that. That's what this is about. Get those phones working. To end poverty, monitor disease, map communities, connect children, improve curricula, provide telemedicine, provide distance tutoring, help businesses connect with their value chains. Unbelievable what can be done. And you guys know it better than anybody. You know it better than I do by far. You know it better than Akhtar. We're the hopeless generation. You know, I need to ask my 17-year-old daughter, though she's getting a little bit old for this also, everything about how to program anything I have to make it usable. Come on, guys, get out there and write the code. Make these technologies work. Solve the problems. But, and let me end here, it's about to get a little bit more complicated. Because you're here now, you're going to go from Development 101 to Development 301 in just 3 years. You're going to become the new advanced leaders of a field that actually is becoming more complicated. Because we're moving from the era of economic development to the era of sustainable development. And that means that as hard as it is to fight poverty, it's only one of the 3 things that we need to do. Sustainable development means the triple bottom line in society. It means that we go after economic well-being, It means that we seriously go after social inclusion in the United States as well, so that everybody has a foothold, everybody has a chance. Boys, girls, men, women, minorities, poor people, everybody. That's the second pillar. And the third is to do this with environmental sustainability. And we're way behind the curve on that, because we've already entered the era of environmental instability. We've already entered the era that the geologists are calling the Anthropocene. We've entered a phase unprecedented in modern history, where extreme events are now normal events, where climate change is running rampant, where oceans are becoming acidified rapidly. And that's your great and unique generational challenge. It's again inescapable, because you have to combine the economics, the societal, and the environmental. And your lab partner is going to be someone halfway around the world, on Skype with you, on Facebook with you, writing an app with you, solving a problem together. Because there's no escaping this challenge. Poor countries don't get any opt-out. Rich people don't get any opt-out. The rich people can hide in their gated communities, but the climate's going to come right over the gates. And last time I checked, their children are still going to be on the same planet as the rest of us. And so try as they might to deny it, to evade it, to obfuscate it, even the Cayman Islands are going to have climate change. So that's the assignment coming up. And the next couple of years, we have to race to the finish line of the Millennium Development Goals. We have till 2015 to meet our mark. And we're going to move into a phase of another 15-year period, most likely. At Rio this summer, the Rio Plus 20 Summit, the world called for Sustainable Development Goals, finishing the fight against extreme poverty by ending it. That's the first homework assignment I gave you. And moving on to a new economy, a new global technology, mobilizing all the smart things you've got at your hands right now. Information technology, social networks, smart grids, renewable energy, nanotechnologies, genomics, unbelievably powerful to enable us not just to do one thing of ending poverty, as crucial and as high a priority as that is, but to do it in a way that saves the planet and makes the world safe for coming generations. Let's continue to meet each year, because I got to give you intermediate grades along the way. Make sure you're doing your homework. But more than that, the Secretary General has recently asked me to open a new global knowledge network. It's called the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. You can look on Monday, the website goes up, UNSDSN, United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and it will be a worldwide effort to mobilize the best brains, the greatest energy, you people, to be solving problems by taking our knowledge, our heart, our commitment, our realization of our unity